Nostradamus told me, you're going to need a drawer of horoscopes because we're going to get into astrological signs, astrological dating, which neither I or Brenda knew anything about. So he told, I said, well, where am I going to find an astrologer in Arkansas who's willing to work on such a strange project? It's hard to even find an astrologer in Arkansas, up in the hills where I live. He said, don't worry, you will find what you need. So within 2 weeks, I met this young man at a meeting I went to, and he said, I don't know why I'm here. I'm here for some reason, but I don't know what it is. And when I told him what I was working on, he was a professional astrologer, and he'd always been fascinated by Nostradamus. And I don't have time to go in his story because none of these things are a coincidence. They are so outrageous the way it all fits together. When Brenda could no longer work with me, I told John, well, it looks like we're finished with the project because we can't work with it anymore. And he says, try it with me. It was like the information was just pouring out. It took a computer to put all of it together. So I don't see how anyone can say it could possibly be a hoax. But they have tried to accuse me of everything. To make this story even stranger, he said, when we are communicating, you are not speaking to the dead. I am not a spirit floating around out here somewhere. It's not a seance. He said, when we are communicating, I am living in France, in my house in the 1500s, writing the prophecies. And he was so emphatic about that, he didn't want to know his own future. He didn't want to know how he was going to die. Now, see, that's a different twist. It's like having his telephone number and I can communicate with him anytime I want. But if that's true, what does that bring up in metaphysics? The idea of simultaneous time. There is no time. Everything is occurring at once. Otherwise, how can he be alive while we are alive and communicating across time? We were interacting in his life. We were there when several different things were happening. We had to stop the communication one time because they brought a young boy in who had been run over by a carriage in front of the house. His wife would come knocking at the door, and she said, I got to go eat a dinner. She's got lamb stew waiting. And I said, well, can't we just wait here until you get back? We had plenty of time left. He said, no, because while I'm gone, the maid will come in and clean the room, and she will see you as ghosts. And she doesn't need that in her life. So it got stranger and stranger, and it had so many twists and turns in it that I stayed with it because it was so interesting. He said, if I show you the most horrible things man can do to himself, will you do something to change it? Because, he said, time is not one line that is set in stone. It is many lines and branches. You can go off in many different directions, from the worst to the least effects of any scenario. So he said, if you know what's going to happen, you can go down the road of least resistance. Maybe you can't stop it altogether, but at least you can make it lesser. He said, you don't realize the power of your own mind. The power of your mind is so intense because you create the reality in your life. A lot of people don't like to know that because their lives are kind of in a mess. They don't want to think they've done it to them themselves. But he said, if the power of one person's mind is that powerful, imagine the power of group mind. You get groups focusing together on one thing, you can create miracles because the power of the mind is not only multiplied, it is squared. You can perform miracles because the energy is not scattered, it is focused.